The Fujita scale rates the intensity of tornadoes, and the highest rating for winds up to 318 miles an hour is F5. With that in mind, let me introduce the Hennessey Venom F5. Endowed with over 1,800 brake horsepower, more than 1,600 pounds-foot of torque and flame-spitting exhausts, the concept of too much is anathema to this £2.1 million car. It promises to be the card that every child will want in their hand when playing top trumps. The VMAX? Well, when it tests at the NASA Shuttle Landing Facility in Florida, the expectation is that it won't be too far off that upper F5 rating, with a target of over 500 kilometers an hour or 311 miles an hour. But Hennessey does want this to be more than just a straight line one-trick pony, so let's take a closer look. Wow. I thought I'd start at the front of the car because A, it seems logical, and also because I just want to talk about the badge here. It's rather beautiful because it's inlaid and then they lacquered over the top of it, but it's a new badge for Hennessey, this H, and that's kind of important for this car because you might have heard of the Venom GT in the past, which looked very much like a Lotus Exige because that's what it was based on, and technically it was still a Lotus Exige. The other part of the Hennessey business is, well, they call it making fast cars go faster. So, you know, everything from the Velociraptor, the Ford truck to, Corvettes, anything really that they can make go faster. And they've done 12,000 of those over the year. They're going to do 1,000 of them in 2021, quite probably. But this is a sort of entirely separate side of the business. This is their first car, ground up. It's entirely their own. It's not based on anything else. So it was deemed right to have its own branding. So that's, well, I just thought I'd mention that there. What have we got here? Well, we've got carbon fibre bodywork. We've got aluminium subframes around the central monocoque, which we'll get to in a minute. So we've got box section aluminium at the front and tubular space frame at the rear. 3 radiators here, so 2 here for engine and then the intercooler and AC in the middle. And it's extraordinary. The huge splitter here. Actually, you can get this bigger splitter, so there will be a high downforce kit available for this, so you can get a bigger splitter and a wing at the back. But it's sort of extraordinary in a way because they've obviously come away from a car that was originally a Lotus in their previous, the Venom GT, as I mentioned before. And actually the look of it from here is quite reminiscent initially of, there's bits of sort of LaFerrari in here, but also the Avaya, the Lotus Hypercar, which is coming out, which is obviously all electric. And that's actually, I say that as a compliment because I think the Avaya is one of the best looking cars I've seen in recent years. So as we move down the side here, wheels, forged wheels. So we've got 265 Cup 2 tyres at the front and 345 at the rear. Brembo discs in there, AP Racing brakes. Penske do the suspension there, so we've got double wishbones all round, and it's fully adjustable suspension. You can also raise the ride height not only at the front, so there's a nose lift, but also at the rear. I love the milled centre caps for these wheels as well. Incidentally, the air from those front radiators is all channeled, in fact, not to sort of come out the side here and so therefore affect the heat for the tyres, but actually channel all the way down through to the back of the car for the diffuser. So they actually keep the airflow down the side relatively clean by doing that. And if you look underneath as well, it is pan flat all the way to the back for that big rear diffuser. Moving down here, I love these. They're so beautiful, these wing mirrors. And actually, because obviously when you're doing 300 miles an hour, potentially, they need to be really, really strong. So these are actually solid carbon fibre, which they then drilled through to just get the electrics up to them. Middle bit of the car, the central part of it, the heart of the chassis, this carbon fibre monocoque, which weighs just 86 kilos. And this car, as much as it's sort of, it's the American dream, this car, it's actually quite a sort of a global car in a way. I've just mentioned, obviously, Brembo and AP. This central monocoque, which is all-encompassing, and this is not cosmetic here, this is actually the monocoque that you can see in all these bits that go round here, back down here as well. It's made by a British company called KS, which I'd never heard of. They in fact do all the carbon fibre on the bodywork, and it is absolutely beautiful stuff. So yes, it's an American car, but they've pulled in partners from all over the world, which I like that. More of that in a bit actually when we get to the engine in gearbox. One little thing though, as much as I've just said it's a global car, I love little things like this. You can just see on the glass here, it's got Hennessey, and it's got the Lone Star for Texas, and then come and take it. That central carbon tub, by the way, has a torsional rigidity of 52,000 Newton meters per degree. For context, that is nearly twice that of an Aston Martin DBX, slightly above a Bugatti Chiron's 50,000 Newton meters per degree, and not too far behind Koenigsegg's carbon chassis, which at 65,000 Newton meters per degree is claimed to be the stiffest in the world. The overall weight of the car is a claimed 1,360 kilos, dry, which is important because it converts to just under £3,000. Walking down the back of the car here, it's I think a little simpler than the front, maybe perhaps not quite as sculpted as I might like, but it's the overall design they've tried to keep simple and sort of, I suppose, fluid, so that it will be a timeless design overall, because they want this to, well, stand the test of time, given they're not producing many. And also, John Hennessey referenced the McLaren F1. He loves the way that has stood the test of time, because it might not be the most extravagant design, but it still looks good all those years after it's first released. And he wants the same for this. Down the back here, well, these lights, they vent from in there. There's a bit of I'm seeing perhaps a little bit of McLaren GT, a bit of the new Maserati MC20 in this back here as well. This huge bumper down here is all one massive piece of machined carbon fibre, possibly the biggest piece of machined carbon fibre on any car. The badge, 3D printed. 3D printing has actually been used an awful lot in the car, and is a real boon for low volume production cars. It's kind of slightly changed the game for people, because you don't have to go to the great expense of sort of building something up and then going off and getting dozens made. It's really a great way of manufacturing pieces for these sorts of cars. Gearbox in the back by Cima. It's a 7-speed single clutch, so I'll be interested to see what the shift is like on that. Obviously it's having to deal with enormous forces. We'll come on to again the engine in a bit. The limit slip diff is by Cima as well. It's geared for 334 miles an hour. That's not saying it's going to do that, but it's not going to be gear limited. So there we are. The aero, the overall drag coefficient is 0.39. They've worked with Total Sim, who are actually based over at Silverstone. Around the back here, the main aerodynamic element is obviously this enormous rear diffuser down here. The idea it's basically, you want a car that's just really well balanced when you're doing that sort of speed overall. Rear wing, there's no active aero on the car, but this rear wing is really nicely integrated actually. We've got the intakes there, and then the air's channeled to come through here, and obviously trying to get all the heat out of the back of the car as well. Talking of heat coming out of the back of the car, there is Cerakote, which is what they kind of use in gun barrels basically to stop them overheating. So all of the underside of here, and in fact all this back carbon panel here, and this metal plate in here. So it's over all of this to stop it getting too hot, because, well, things might get a little hot. We'll talk more about that later perhaps. Now, the engine. Actually, for the engine, let's take the cover off so we can see it. Internals include titanium inlet valves, Inconel exhaust valves, and forged steel conrods. And before you think that this must be an engine stretched to breaking point, it has been tested at over 2,000 brake horsepower. Welcome to Fury. This is what it's all about really. This is 6.6 litres of very American V8. It's a cast iron block, forged aluminium headers, and, well, I'll give you those headline figures again as well. 1,817 brake horsepower. So this is a push-rod engine that revs to 8,200 RPM. Torque, 1,193 pounds-foot of torque, and there's over 1,000 pounds-foot of torque available all the way from 2,000 RPM. It is a beautiful thing to look at. Instantly, what I'm leaning on here, the brace bars that go all the way down to the top of the suspension there, just because there's, obviously, imagine all that torque going through the rear wheels, so they literally brace all the way up into the top of the monocoque up here. It is just, as I say, absolutely beautiful. Got the machined from billet aluminium plano up here, which just is so beautiful. Then they've got it goes plenum intercooler and then into the intake manifold down there. So that's all very neat in there. The size of the precision turbos with titanium 3D printing in there, it's just enormous. Well, look at the size of the wastegate coming straight off the header there. That is just, and there's a massive blow-off valve, obviously, each side as well. And then, yeah, it comes straight back in here again. Everything is just oversized. The fuel rails down here, he described it, the injectors as being like basically a sprinkler system. They're just pumping fuel into them. It is quite extraordinary when you look at this engine, and really quite a feat of engineering. And obviously the figures, what this is all leading up to, not just the top speed, the acceleration figures are just insane. 0 to 100 kilometers an hour, 2.6 seconds, so 0 to 62 miles an hour. And you think, oh, that's kind of Tesla range. Okay, wait for it. 0 to 200 kilometers an hour, so 124 miles an hour, 4.7 seconds. 4.7 seconds. 0 to 300 kilometers an hour, 8.4 seconds. That's 186 miles an hour in 8.4 seconds. 0 to 400 kilometers an hour, 15.5 seconds. That is just insane. They actually reckon you're probably not going to be able to use full power until you're over 140 miles an hour. Just the mind boggles. I cannot imagine what this is going to feel like from the driver's seat. Talking of which, we're probably going to have a look at the driver's seat. First thing you notice when you get in here is, well, it's the steering wheel, which is fabulous. I love the look of it. There's clearly a lot of inspiration taken from Ford GT, so certainly in these switches here, which feel fantastic. And in fact in the paddles as well, they're not as big as you get in the Ford GT, but that sort of pierced look there, and listen to this. It's a proper sort of, they said they were going for a rifle bolt action, and it's just lovely. Really, really like that. It sort of reminds me of a mixture of Ford GT and sort of Aston Martin Vulcan, I suppose, and obviously also the yoke from an aeroplane. And they said when they were developing this that it was when they sat in here and thought, right, what's it going to be like doing 300 miles an hour potentially in this car? You're going to be kind of almost as much as like a pilot as you are a driver. So that's why they took a lot of the sort of inspiration from that. And obviously all the switches are up here for everything you pretty much need. You've got the HVAC down here, which you can swipe across or up and down for that. I do like the vents down here, which are stacked on top of each other. They look really, really cool. They remind me of English Electric Lightning, which was F6, not F5. Elsewhere, the materials in here, well, they say they've used leather where they've used it sparingly, I suppose. So used it at the touch points, but nowhere else. It comes from a particularly old, in fact, the oldest tannery, which is in Scotland. Other details, the materials in terms of the carbon fibre, lots of exposed carbon fibre in here, and it's a mixture of gloss and matte. Incidentally, down here we've got some carpet, and it's not sitting on top of the carbon fibre. They've actually sort of almost inlaid it here into, and there, big pedals as well, enormous pedals, probably the largest pedals I think I've ever seen in a car of this type. Storage, you might be wondering, because obviously when you buy one, you're going to think, well, some storage. You've got a little cubby hole down here. You also got a little slit down here for your phone, and in fact the glove box is sort of where the passenger will put their feet down there. You've got Venom F5 down there as well. A little bit of aluminium up here, which is a nice detail, and there are lots of really, really nice details in this car for, given this is their first ground up car, they've really paid attention to stuff. There's obviously the badges here for the American flag here, and then the Texas Lone Star flag there, and you've got little ones here on the seats as well, and then you look in here and the F5 on the hinges in there. It's a cool place to be. It actually feels quite spacious in terms of, it's not, again I keep harking back to Ford GT, I think because you feel like you sit really inboard from the outside of the car, there's this sense of sort of being right sort of towards the centre of the car, but there's much more width between you and a passenger over here. Headroom's actually not bad, although it does sort of obviously comes down either side and up here as well. Alcantara in the roof. No rear view mirror at the moment because all you'd see is the engine rocking away behind you. Now, if you get one of these cars, there's obviously a lot of testing to go through first to sort of verify what numbers this may or may not do, and it will do what it does. They're not going to say that it will definitely break the 500 km/h barrier or anything like that. You know, the tyres, they've done all the calculations, the load ratings, they think they'll take it, but they'll work with Michelin, and there's a lot of testing to go through first, and not just in a straight line either. They want this car to be something that will work on a British B road, and there will be obviously lots of different modes, all the way up to F5 mode, which is incidentally what is in the screen here, which is pretty cool. I'm not quite sure about that screen. It feels like that perhaps needs to be slightly more delicate, like this screen in the middle, which has got the Apple CarPlay and connects to your phone. But if you buy one of these cars, then you will need to go through a day's testing to be allowed to actually access the F5 mode in total. They said they will go to Circuit of Americas, also want to go to the Nürburgring as well, not necessarily to set an outright lap time, but to check that it will go under 7 minutes there. And yeah, the only thing left really is to wonder what happens when you press the ignition button just there. And they have promised that they will start up the engine for me. So, without further ado, let's hear that 6.6 litre turbocharged V8 start up. Right, I genuinely haven't heard this yet, so fire in the hole!